Hello everyone and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Steve Ryder as usual on my left, and this week we welcome Tanya Stevenson to the show. But we start this week by paying tribute to the passing of Michael O'Sullivan. The sport of horse racing remains in mourning, and understandably a lot of people are struggling to get on with their day-to-day lives because of what has happened recently. Everybody here at Racing Weekly send our deepest condolences to his friends and family. Tanya, it's very difficult to talk about any racing without that hanging over our heads, but the sport does go on. Racing in Ireland has obviously taken a stance that they won't be having meetings for part of this week, and they will recommence later on in the week. But the sport does go on, and we have to honour him whilst we do that. But we look ahead to what's coming up this weekend, and I'm sure that people will be remembering him constantly between now and then. But when you think about what has happened and how you deal with it and move on, how does it sit with you?
It's very, very sad, obviously, and he enriched everyone's life, whether you were really close to him or whether you're a recreational viewer of racing, because his ability was immense. And we all take stock and we sit back and realise he was taken so young from us in a sport that we love, and he sacrificed everything, really, for a sport that he loved and we all loved. And as you mentioned, we echo all the sentiments that have been there, and there have been some amazing tributes to him, and it's just a shame I never knew him, but you feel you do. And whether there were people close to him or those watching from afar, what has been written or what has been said shows you what a figure of a man he was. And I think we should, or if you haven't already, read plenty of them. There's some great interviews with Michael O'Sullivan, and we should appreciate, obviously, Marine Nationale stands out. He achieved so much, but also what stands out was the fact that he educated himself to a university degree. He was fluent in French. He looked beyond the sport itself. And what Ruby Walsh wrote and has said, he gave every conceivable point that embraced us into what goes on and what Michael's sacrificed. And I just echo everyone's sentiments, as I say, and the pain and the sorrow going through the family and friends is unimaginable. And as you say, tributes and condolences to them. And it just makes us think constantly about the risks that people go through for this sport.
Yeah, there's very little doubt that between now, Cheltenham and beyond, the memory of Michael O'Sullivan will be fresh in our minds. Steve, but we do have to push forward because that's the nature of life, that's the nature of the sport. And looking at what's to come this weekend, there is obviously good racing, but as much as we try to enjoy it, there's something still hovering over our minds, isn't it?
Yeah, I think people deal with grief in different ways. I've had some friends that haven't watched racing Sunday and yesterday because of it. I myself like to stick to a routine, and I found that's helped me over the last couple of days because it has hurt, and you do go back and watch interviews and everything from there, but I feel just having a focus on this show, on watching racing, looking at form, has helped me go beyond that. And like you said, he had an unbelievable talent as a rider. He seemed an even better person off a horse. Everyone's just said how much of a gentleman he is, and yeah, we'll remember it.
The horses do provide some escape for people who are struggling and suffering. So Tanya, let's focus a little bit on the horses now. And is there a horse that you have enjoyed so far this season? One that you feel is gearing up for a big spring?
There's plenty. There's plenty, Rish. But as you said, I have to pick out one. I'll give a sneaky one a little bit later when we talk through this weekend. But obviously, when we focus on this weekend, quite a few people caught the eye with Joyo Machine. Now, take him out and think about who he's run against. And I'm looking at Spirits Bay, who was also in that race at Cheltenham behind Constitution Hill. And he was also entered up for that Ascot race behind, obviously, Altobelli, but didn't go there. And his entertainment with his run so far, he's a little terrier. He runs over 2 miles, he jumps with so much enthusiasm, and as much focus has been on Joya Machan, which is running really well, and so too is Spirits Bay. And in a way, his battling qualities have lit it up for me, even though he's not won this season yet. I think that may happen if he runs at Cheltenham. Possibly the way he runs, running off the last Aintree could suit him better because there's a lovely flat running. So yes, Spirits Bay.
Okay, Spirits Bay. And obviously, as you mentioned, that run behind Constitution Hill, sometimes people think when a horse like Constitution is so short in the market wins, they tend to think the other horses are flattered. So could be quite interesting how that pans out. Okay, we are going to start this week's show with Racing Recap. And obviously at Ascot, the star performance came from Pic D'Orhy, winning the Ascot Chase once again. Paul Nicholls with a Grade 1 victory, much to his delight and to the people that support him. It was never really in doubt from early on, was it?
I'm going to be a bit bolshy here. Providing it was going to be Pic D'Orhy in his own realm, it was never going to be too much in doubt. It was lovely to see Corbett's Cross there, absolutely fantastic. But we had a bit of deja vu because we were going to have Pic D'Orhy versus L'Homme-Pressé, but L'Homme-Pressé had come into it with a campaign that was more spaced out. The previous campaign was rushed. We've got to get to the Gold Cup, and we'll go and take on Pic D'Orhy in the Ascot Chase over 2 mile 5, which wasn't ideal, but he ran a cracker. And then you see what L'Homme-Pressé did afterwards. Pic D'Orhy is an immense horse when you take him on in his own realm, as it showed again on Saturday. Harry Cobden knew the power he had under him, and he thought, right, I've got horses that need 3 miles minimum. And that's potentially where people are going to trip up a bit, because they're all suddenly, I notice in the notes here that they've knocked out Corbett's Cross for the Gold Cup. Oh my goodness me. He's running at Ascot over 2 mile 5, and look what subsequently L'Homme-Pressé did in the Gold Cup. And Corbett's Cross, they probably came over in here. They'd even muted beforehand. If the ground was a bit fast, they might not come, but they've come. They came after Pic D'Orhy. They've done tremendous. He's made a few tetchy errors, but that was only because potentially they're going too fast for him. You've got to remember he won over 3 miles 6 furlong at the Cheltenham Festival, and he's only within 10 lengths of Pic D'Orhy at Ascot. So yes, Pic D'Orhy was great. He was superb. He's won it for the second time, but I wouldn't be too hasty in downsizing Corbett's Cross efforts. I thought it was good because, you know, it's a bit like a ground going to the pickup. He's not going to 2 mile 5 furlongs round Ascot of all places. Is a bit too sharp for him, and he's run a cracker, a lovely hiding in plain sight, shall we see, for a race over.
I thought he ran a great race in defeat.
Yeah.
But I just want to focus on the achievements of the winner. Tanya mentioned he wins it for a second time. You look at the other horses that have won it, pretty smart when we look back through history. Titchev, Monet's Garden, Riverside Theatre, Q Card. Pic D'Orhy, though, does he get enough credit?
No, I don't think he does, because he does it away from Cheltenham. That performance in the Melling Chase a couple of years ago was brilliant as well. And he's only really ran one bad race recently, and that was in the Melling Chase last year. They didn't set out to give him an easy lead, did they? Yeah. When they lined up, there was 4 of them going to the first, and eventually Harry Cobden just got him into that rhythm out in front. I think he's really important on this horse, because he does have his own way of jumping. And I thought it was a really good performance. Obviously, L'Homme-Pressé made mistakes, jumped left-handed, as he always has done. I didn't think going back right-handed would have suited him. It was too short for Corbett's Cross. I thought he just spent too long in the air, kind of ballooned his fences. He jumped as if a Gold Cup would suit him better than a 2 mile 5 speed track round Ascot. But I wasn't particularly in love with the performance as much as Tanya was. But I wonder whether Pic D'Orhy should be aimed at the King George later this year. Right-handed, Kempton, flat track. I think if Ile-Francais doesn't run in it for any reason, I think I went through the field last night, he'd get a relatively easy lead on there. He's obviously got 2.5 mile pace, And yeah, I thought with him getting older, it might be worth him stepping up to 3 miles for the first time.
One of the other talking points I wanted to ask you both was some of the reaction. I know we often talk about social media and we don't give it all the credit or negativity. We don't focus on either one and just deal with it as it is. But some of the attention on Paul Nicholls after the race, that he was getting a bit carried away, that it was I think some of the reaction to Paul Nicholls' struggles this season has been a bit over the top, considering his record. Surely you build up a bit of credit for how well you've done in your career, do you not think?
He's still got a superb strike rate for what's happened this season, considering, he deserves the utmost credit, of course. There have been some tremendous runs of horses, which we'll talk through one coming up shortly. We're going to talk through another one that's potentially going to run at Kempton. There's been some so high points, just because they haven't been in the top echelon. Can we just hold fire a minute? I think we lose count of how many Grade Ones he's had. And it seems as though to me that he mentioned it in passing that the flu jab for his horses have really taken him back. And ordinarily you see like a month of just hovering around the double figure percentage. It's been 2 months. And maybe that's the fact. And for me, I've sort of happy days, because when you come out of that, it's going to be like a conveyor belt of winners, and nearly gotten it with one. And I noticed he's entered Samarive again quite quickly, and I didn't think, although that came virtually last, I didn't think that ran too bad. It kept ballooning every hurdle and showed that they do need runs. But yeah, the reaction is unnecessary, totally unnecessary. You focus on the small amount of bad luck he's had, rather than the immense amount of skill he has training some good horses
over such a long period of time. But it seems like the performances of Regent Stroll and Caldwell Potter, people are putting so much emphasis on how well they've done because of how much they've cost, and somehow that's reflecting poorly on Paul Nicholls as a trainer, when those are just 2 horses through his entire career where he's been brilliant overall.
Yeah, people would love to think that other people have wasted their money. It's the same in football when you get an expensive striker that suddenly doesn't score goals straight away, and it's and it's the same with Pep Guardiola. Like, he's now having some struggles at Man City, and suddenly all of the titles that he's won for the previous few years are then discounted. You don't get that as credit. No.
Yeah.
We're just going to look at now. I particularly like the ITV documentary centred around Paul Nicholls and how much of a competitor he is. And a fired up Paul Nicholls is great for horse racing, and I loved it.
Yeah. Can I quickly ask you both where you stand with L'Homme Pressé for the Gold Cup after that? Any views?
Going back left-handed will obviously help him.
Yeah.
That as a jumping performance was terrible. I always had in my head that it was best fresh.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been fresh so far this season, other than in the King George.
At least
So
he was pulled up, I suppose.
Yeah, Charlie, he pulled him up pretty good.
Yeah.
That was a horrible jump that he did, and he did pull him up rather quickly. I mean, I got all excited after his run in the King George, because somehow he got close, because that's a bit like Corbett's Cross. They couldn't get close to what was a phenomenal King George, but yeah.
Don't think we'll see him going that way again, do you? Right.
No.
I don't know, they keep doing it. He keeps jumping left-handed at right-handed tracks, and they still keep going back.
I think, well, maybe. I mean, I don't know as much as them, but it doesn't look good. The Kingwell Hurdle, Golden Ace. I think we were all strong. You were strong about Golden Ace's chances in the Kingwell. But I must admit, as they raced down the backside as she came off the bridle, I thought, oh dear.
It was an interesting race to watch. I think all 4 will have gone favourite in running at some point during this race. I didn't think Burdett Road jumped as well as he has done previously. I don't know whether it was the ground, whether it was Sam Tristan-Davis on instead of Harry Cobden. Not that I love Sam Tristan-Davis as a rider, but obviously that new relationship between them. James Owen seemed to infer afterwards they might claim off him in a county hurdle rather than going in a champion hurdle. I thought Brentford Hope travelled well to a point and then flattened out completely. I thought Hansard was arguably going to be the biggest danger. Went down the inside, and then it probably was just ratings and class that meant that he dropped away. I think he had £10 to find on ratings with the top 2. But I then went back and I remembered when we were at Newmarket together in April, and went back to when she won at the April meeting at Cheltenham, and she was 4-9, and she was bumped along for a couple of strides, and I thought, yeah, you will find off the bridle. And as soon as she was then brought against that rail, I thought, yeah, you can out-battle him here. Jumped right-handed, which would obviously be a negative going for the champion hurdle. It depends how they ride her in a champion hurdle. I think I'd prefer her in a champion hurdle than a mare's, because if you sit off the back and aim to pick up fourth, maybe third, I do think she'll have a chance on running past. And I do think that's a better route to go down for her as opposed to Burdett Road. Because I fell into the trap a couple of years ago backing I Like to Move It without Constitution Hill in the champion hurdle. And when you're ahead of horses like Constitution Hill and they breeze past, the horse kind of goes, well, that's my race ran. Whereas if you stalked them in behind in order to run on well at the finish, I do think you could probably run into one. But if both the mares, State Man, Constitution Hill all run, she is playing for fourth or fifth, isn't she?
Just have a look at where she features in Bet365's betting for the champion hurdle. She is 40-1. Burdett Road also 40s, but I think they're talking about the county hurdle for Burdett Road, who's 14-1 with Bet365 for that race. What was your takeaway from the Kingwell?
I thought it was a brilliant to watch. I thought it was a fantastic little duel. I agree with Steve. Maybe it was the ground with Burdett Road. His stride seemed quite pronounced in the fact that I suppose it might be accentuated because he's got the white legs, but they did seem rather pronounced, as if he wouldn't kind of relax himself. Certainly coming down the home straight, Golden Ace, she was just absolutely brilliant. She battled away. He had the ideal pitch on the hard stand side rail. Maybe that helped as well, but also the experience of having run over a little bit further and going into the race, having taken on battle away against the likes of Lucky Place, and eventually the fast track like Wincanton, she's come through in the end. And maybe it's kind of a cliche, maybe she's a spring horse, and she will improve. I'd much, like Steve, love to see her in a champion ridden, as exactly as Steve said, to come through late. And I sense that potentially that's what they'll do. And when you weigh up the finances of it all, when you see what you get for potentially fourth or even third for a champion, I think that's virtually more than you get for winning a mare's or near or close to. And why not be cheeky, because she's been against Bright Days Ahead and
beaten her.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that. And it was a Jeremy Scott day. Yeah. So he's not been a Jeremy Scott year, but suddenly it became a Jeremy Scott year. And now, do we think, I now start looking through Jeremy Scott entries coming up now, because he's got horses that are exceptionally well handicapped. So coming into March in the spring, she could be, go for the champion.
Yeah, and a tip of the hat to the Ryder as well. I thought
brilliant. Lorcan was absolutely brilliant.
Terrific. The Rendlesham Hurdle, Gwenny May Boy produced quite a performance. I must admit. Now, I expected Gwenny May Boy at the start of the season to produce a performance that might put Gwenny May Boy on the verge of doing something like that in the Rendlesham, but it's sort of caught me by surprise. The manner of the victory. I mean, picked up Beauport.
Yes.
Travelling like a good thing.
Yeah, we were unlucky in the fact that we lost the Lion, but I think we're going to get the Lion this week. I seen me and Lions entered up this weekend, so Kerrion was there, and Indiana Dream was taken out as well. I think that was a ground thing for the pair of them. It would be lovely to see the Lion go over 3 miles. But that said, you had last year's winner in the race, Botok Haas, and I thought he would be sort of ridden in a more determined manner. But then if you can't get to Beauport, but I don't really mean to be really mean and horrible, but when you now look at the long walk form, you're pulling it. You are pulling your hair out. I mean, you can give excuses. Crambo doesn't like Cheltenham and made a horrendous error. Strong leader obviously wasn't right. Shoot First, I couldn't wait to sort of see where Shoot First ran next, and Shoot First didn't run well next. And so then we were left with Beauport, who in fairness ran really, really well. Really well. So he's kind of contradicted that long walk form, but you do tend to get that when you're cracking on being a front runner. But as you say, mailboy just sail past in really determining great fashion. But where now?
Well,
Exactly. That's the problem, because you've now gone and won a Grade 2 in really, really easy fashion. And in hindsight, perhaps Kerry made the right decision there with not going with the Lion, who's a gritty, determined performer. But it was a big win for Charlie Todd, really. It was a huge win, and he took it with both hands, and it rode it with so much confidence as well.
Well, for the Patemps Network final,
Yes.
Gwenny Mayboy's 10-1.
Yeah.
The Wall Park, obviously you referred to the race at Ascot,
Yes.
who was running on at the end there.
Yeah.
Who I actually like for the stayers.
Stayers, yeah. He's a Stayers.
He's a 6-1 favourite. Another horse that I like is Jericho de Refine, who is 8-1 for the Patemps.
Oh, didn't he run well the other day?
Yes, he did.
Making a mistake at every fence, talking out my pocket.
What was your... I mean, did you ever expect Gwenny Mayboy to have that sort of run?
No, it says it all that a Grade 2 was won by a 139 rated horse who was beaten in 2 handicaps prior to it. And the fact that he was sent off 6-1 as well probably said it all around the race. I gave my reservations around Botox Hass on the ground. Beauport, obviously, was a stepping stone to the Grand National, which I think he probably enhanced his claims for, to be honest. I thought he ran actually quite well over hurdles. You touch on where he's going to go next. It's interesting because he's qualified for the Patemps through that run at Carlisle. I wonder whether they'll wait for Aintree with him. He's never been to Cheltenham before in his life. He obviously was a really impressive winner at Aintree last season. I think he won by sort of 7 lengths in one of those handicap hurdles. Now, the handicap's put him up £10 to 149 this morning, which I thought was a fair hike for winning what looks a weak Grade 2. So he's now rated 149. I wonder whether they'll look at the Liverpool Hurdle, because if Tiapu wins the Stayers, as many people think they would, the UK contingent doesn't look that strong, and I wonder whether they'll go for the Liverpool Hurdle instead.
Okay, fair call. But you mentioned the National. Obviously, Beauport is 33-1 with Bet365 for the Grand National. And we'll talk about the Grand National next, because we'll talk about the trial that took place at Haydock, where Famous Bridge hit the line pretty hard, and he's now 40-1 for the National. I think...
Yeah, I don't think he'll get in.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get in.
Yeah, he won't get
But
in.
he's going to go to the Ultima.
Yeah.
You might talk about that later on. But regardless, I thought that was a really good performance from Famous Bridge. When they jumped the last, what he did from the last, what's the phrase? From the back of the last to the line, that cliche. That was really impressive.
It was. He was sent off joint favourite for this last year. He was £2 out of the handicap this year. Won this in impressive style. He finished 4th in the Ultima last year off 139. He's now off 142 off his revised mark. So it will be more difficult for him in the Ultima. But it was just great to see a Grand National trial won in those colours, wasn't it, of Trevor Hemmings. I haven't checked which price Man was in running, but I was fairly confident at the time when Sean Flanagan had a, let's say, soft unseat. I don't know how much that form is going to be worth going forward, but a race that I'm not going to watch the replay of too fondly.
Was it a treble, and that was the one that...
Golden Ace picked Dory, and then man.
Yeah. Tanya, take on Famous Bridge's win?
I thought it was brilliant to see him, because he ran so well, conceding so much weight to Egbert and Jack's Parrot last time. And the conditions suited him as well. He had the misfortune of what Man had 12 months ago, and then went on to, because he didn't like Donny, and then he had the misfortune, and then went to Cheltenham and ran an absolute stormer at Cheltenham, and where, as you say, he was potentially probably outpaced, but he's still. This time around, I think he'd be better off at Cheltenham, because it'd be a little bit more condensed, but they'll still potentially go off a bit quick. But he'll be in the Ultima. He's number 80 in the National, so you need so many to come out anyway. Yeah. But the colours winning that race, it was just brilliant. And well done to Sean, who I think had a double next day at Musselburgh. So he's riding really well, Sean.
The Rendlesham at Ascot, naturally, I put up Lowry's Bar as my best bet last week, so guaranteed not to run, as have most of my best bets. And then Jinko Blue came down early on in the race. So what do you make of the Changing Man's win? Slightly hollow?
slightly hollow, but then let's move away from Saturday and let's celebrate Changing Man, what he's done coming up to that race, because he was the pick, I think, of Tom Segal going into the race for good reason. He's achieved so much. He ran well at Ascot earlier in the season when he split Victorino and 300-5, and then he went to Donny and chased home Dot Pit Me, I think, at Donny, and he is one of those horses you sense that, I mean, it's not his fault that his rivals, what happened to his rivals, and he just went round and claimed his grade 2, but he has got this constitution around him, his strength around him, that he was quick enough to finish well in a handicap hurdle at the festival not so long ago. I think he finished 7th in a attempts or something. It was just amazing. That's how good he is. I would sense that if he goes to Cheltenham, he'll be very hard to keep out of the frame, because he's like he's honest, he's a yardstick, and Joe Tizard will be pleased. We've gone round Ascot, that's great. He can't help what Jinko Blue did. Yeah. But we see he's spot on now. He's had his run. He'll be ready for festival wherever he's going next, and I'd like really to labour on his achievements before that.
Yeah, and we may be talking about Jinko Blue a little bit later on the show, because he could be coming out of things for the Pendle. But as a guide, I mean, I think Tanya's point about the honesty, the reliability of the Changing Man was really the takeaway.
I mean, he was 0 from 9, finished second 5 times. So it was one of those races where Jinko Blue departs at the 3rd and you think, oh no, you can't throw this away. But he didn't. Won them by 24 lengths. Yeah. Thought the handicap was a bit harsh. He put him up £2 to 140 today. I thought he could have left him unchanged for that, to be honest. The Tizards had Oscar Elite win a 3-runner Reynoldstown a few years back and went on to finish 5th in an Ultima off 139. The Changing Man's now off 140. He is, I think, 12 to 1 for the Ultima, 40 to 1 for the Brown Advisory, and you'd imagine he'll go the handicap route off only £2 higher. Yeah, I'm still not convinced with him in a real hard battled finish. So up the hill at Cheltenham, I'd be wanting to put in an in-running lay, I think.
Forecast and tricast, that's it. Okay. I've got it ready.
I'm going to let you talk about the Swingley Chase, which I thought was one of the races of the weekend.
Thanks, Rich. Saved me.
Victorino is one of Sue's favourite horses, and it was very much on the bob. I thought Harry Cobden did all he can to keep the sometimes awkward 300-3.5 involved, and nearly pulled it off.
This was a great race to watch, and a superb race to watch for people that don't like horse racing. I actually went to pick my daughter up from my parents at around 3 o'clock, and even they got excited watching it with no interest in horse racing, because it was one of those races where you could really cheer on a horse at the finish. And Victorino, 300-3.5, their course form came to the fore. I think Tom Cannon will probably want the ride back on Teresita. They obviously won well over 2.5 miles last time. We're stepping up to 3 miles. I thought if he'd asked for an effort a little bit sooner, could have got there. But if you look at this as a race for form, I imagine outside of Ascot, you can probably throw it away, and they'll all be back here for that meeting in November next season, where they're all going to be towards the head of the market and towards the head of the finish.
Yeah. About Teresita, there was a point on the turn for home where you can see how well she's going. She's on the rail. They've still obviously got 3.5, 4 furlongs to go, but didn't seem to get out, couldn't get out.
No, couldn't get out at all. I was, let's say, had an interest on 300-3.5, as I think everyone stood around me by the screens at Haydock, really. But I thought it was one of the best races I've seen all season. Credit to Victorino. And you mentioned Teresita. As it happened for a danger, as they're coming for home, I'm looking at Teresita and thinking...
Probably travelling best, Tony Vernon.
Travelling best, travelling, and fair play to Teresita. What a run, and maybe in hindsight you want it back. Maybe if there is anyone to take, because all the focus obviously was on Victorino, Charlie Deutsch, because I think Benicia had come into the meeting 6 out of 9 at Ascot this season, and obviously by inference Charlie's got a good record there. Obviously focus on Victorino, but they've missed out Teresita. Now, if they run again this season, if that, please, Lucy, go to the topper, because mares have a good record in the topper. They do have a good record. And obviously you're not going over 3, you're going over 2 mile 5, and I think she jumps so well. She's a bonny soul, and she would just really show them up in the top, and she really would go well.
I thought if she'd pinged the last, absolutely pinged the last, she might have put her head in the finish. But she just got that little extra stride and gone in slightly deeper than ideal.
Yes.
And that really cost her. But she's such a honest, she travelled really well. She's clearly improving. So I can't wait to see her again.
Yeah.
I also thought one of the best performances of the weekend was Altabelli.
Oh my goodness.
That horse, if you backed Altabelli through the race, I don't think you had a moment's concern. He jumped beautifully all the way round. He travelled like an absolute dream. He's also a horse that looks like he's absolutely thriving at the moment, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, he's up £10 to 147, so that might hinder his chances. Obviously, in a Coral Cup, I think he was into 8 to 1 with Bet365 for that. He's going to go novice chasing next season. He's a big strapping horse. I'm really excited. He reminds me kind of Load of Sud. Can be really competitive in some of these high class handicap hurdles, and then go novice chasing and definitely be a graded performer in that sphere. I thought Samuel Spade was given a fantastic ride by Ben Jones as well to win there. Apparently he's going to head to Punchestown next after that. Jackie Hobbs was really good in the Mare's Bumper. That was obviously won by Anno Power last year. I thought Harry Cobden taught her a lot throughout the race, as well as being there to win. Just have a look at the Potemps prices for me, anti-post, because the one that took my eye was Doddy the Great. I've never seen Brian Hughes turn around so much in a race. Obviously finished second behind One Big Bang, but qualified for it. I thought the first time cheap pieces really livened him up, and the step up to 3 miles as well helped him. And
33 to 1 with Bet365 for the Potemps.
I would put him as having a similar chance to Jericho de Repene, and he's 4-5 times the price of him.
Gypcott ran well.
Yeah.
As well, Gypcott was detached for
Quite
quite a while.
for the Potemps as well.
Yeah, and then just slowly come into the race. That was a good run.
Because I think Doddy ran okay at the festival last year when obviously the Henderson horses weren't right. I think he finished 7th.
Yeah.
So that was one. And a couple over in Ireland. Blue Lemons and Kitzbühel won the first 2 races at Goran for Paul Townend and Willie Mullins. And then Classic Getaway beat St Sam in the Red Mill. So good day over there for Willie Mullins as well.
And welcome back, My Drogo.
Yes.
With Mr. Will Biddick on board,
Yeah.
who, My Drogo made a few schoolboy errors, but that would be the fact that we haven't seen too much of him, and there was a point that he was easily beaten the points. But My Drogo, they mentioned that Cheltenham, no, perhaps, because I don't think he get up the hill, but
Not true.
Mr. Biddick knows how to win over those entry classes.
Well,
if Will's booked there, he might be picked up elsewhere. But
I recall, and you know when you're on the race course, you hear certain things. So I remember after My Drogo won at Aintree as a novice over hurdles.
yeah,
I remember being very close to Dan Skelton, and I'm pretty certain he said something along the lines of, "This is the best I've got" at the time.
yes,
And obviously because of that, I didn't get a chance to get him to say that on air. He didn't say that, but I'm sure I heard that. So for years,
yes.
obviously after that, I stored it up, and then he came out, and then what happened at the fences, and then his career sadly didn't go the way that, or certainly that comment that stuck in my mind. So then on Saturday, watching that race where Dan Skelton had jet plane in it as well, I'm thinking, well, this is quite interesting. And watching it, hang on a second, maybe My Drogo's still got a big one in him. So exactly my thoughts, and I do not go back to Cheltenham. Let's go to Aintree and see what we can do. Anything else, Tans, apart from My Drogo? Or, I mean...
Shall we rewind? I'm going to be a bit naughty. Shall we rewind to Thursday?
So you were fine to go for Thursday?
And go to Newcastle in a bumper.
Yeah.
There was lots of expensive horses on show in a bumper. But it was won by a horse called a Pontweed.
Yes.
Won very easily with Danny McMenamin aboard.
Was having a fine season.
Yeah, that was his 50th winner as well. And it took my eye because there was some really nice bumper horses, and it was a quiet Newcastle meeting. And let's see what happens to a Pontweed, because it's unusual for Nicky Richards to have a. Well, obviously he's got some great horses. We saw by Famous Fridge, and but he just raced away. I think Danny, one of Danny's easiest winners of the season, but then it might come to nothing. You just don't know.
Bumper winners, they go up like that.
But Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit on because he's enormous. This horse. So yeah, just watch the replays. Nice horse.
All right. All good for last week?
Oh.
Tidied it up? Yeah.
Yes.
Danny McMenamin, I think, is having a terrific season. I saw him give the
Yes.
horse a ride of Anne Hamilton's at Carlisle earlier this week.
I wanted to be at Kempton on
Or
Saturday.
something. Yeah. Okay. So that's a look at this week's racing recap. Now, before we get into our weekend preview, just to let you know that our sponsor, Bet365, have a best odds guaranteed offer. It's available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 a.m. on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you at the bigger odds. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. And just a reminder about our Cheltenham preview this year, which takes place on Monday, the 3rd of March, 6 p.m. for a 6:30 start. It takes place at the Drayton Court Hotel in Ealing. Steve, myself, Gavin Lynch, Willie Twiston-Davies and Pat Cooney. It is free to oddschecker Unlimited subscribers and includes a halftime pie and pint. I was saying last week when I first read that, I thought it was half a pie and pint, which didn't really go down well. So I misread it. My eyesight's not what it used to be. But just to remind you, March the 3rd, 6 p.m. for a 6:30 start, the Drayton Court Hotel. Myself, Steve, Gavin Lynch, Willie Twiston-Davies and Pat Cooney for our Cheltenham preview. But from our Cheltenham preview to our weekend preview, and one of the big races this weekend is the Eider Chase taking place at Newcastle. Last year's winner, Angler's Crag, in there. But O'Connell has to be one of the most interesting horses. Just seems to be improving. I thought he's really good at Sandown. Felt to me at Sandown when he won last time out that he hit a bit of a flat spot and then stayed on really strongly, which goes in keeping with his win at Market Race and ever further. What do you think about the chances?
Obviously, he's got huge chances. He comes into the race. He's like a copy and paste from Angler's Crag last year. Angler's Crag came into the race on the up, and O'Connell's the same, exactly copy and paste coming through. They started slowly, Joel Parkinson and Sue Smith and the Jills. Now they picked up and the high point, and it will continue getting higher and higher, was O'Connell's victory in the Mastered. He'd won the Lincolnshire National, and as you said, he came into Sandown. The one problem with Sandown was the ground was heavy. I don't think we've got any rain coming for Newcastle and or Kempton, or if we do, it's not sufficient to change it from good to soft. And also, O'Connell doesn't race up with the pace, and I find an Eider is a bit like a Scottish National, that you have to be in the rhythm in the first 2 or 3 horses, and it's very hard to come from behind, but it might be different. O'Connell's got to carry a big weight. It's not a race that recently has been won by horses carrying a massive weight. That's all the negatives. All the positives is when you start looking at those up against him, they are not on the trajectory that O'Connell is. There's a couple in there that potentially bring some superior form, but whether they'll actually run is the question. And at least we know this is O'Connell's target, and he's rightfully where he is because he is Angler's Crag of last year, isn't he? He really is rightly. It's lovely. It seemed too short from the Sandown race. The Lincolnshire National and the Sandown race seemed to short.
I felt like in the Sandown he was in a bit of trouble.
He was.
Off the bridle, Gavin Sheehan squeezing it, but he picked up. It was inevitable once he started picking up in the straight.
Yeah.
Collector's items are 5-1 favourite with Bet365. O'Connell 6-1 at the moment. Angler's Crag 13-2, passing well for Jamie Snowden's 8-1. Egbert, who Tanya's mentioned earlier on, 10s. Jack's Parrot 11s, along with Sporting Ace and 12s. Bar those. What do you like, Steve?
Keep going.
Yeah,
You're nearly there.
Choose the news.
No.
12. Bodhisattva 14's Gaborio.
There you
You've
go.
tipped before, of course, Gaborio.
So I just checked on my phone because we didn't have a jockey booking before that, but Henry Brook is now jocked up on Gaborio. And I wanted to check that before making my case because they've got Jack Parrot in the race as well. Now, like Tanya said, this race is going to be very different to the heavy ground renewal that Angler's Crag won last year. O'Connell shouldn't be inconvenienced by the ground. He won by 9.5 lengths on his penultimate start on good to soft ground. So that would be a positive for him. But Gaborio is the one for me. Obviously, he ended last season with a couple of victories in Hunter Chases at Cheltenham and Cartmel. Then finished 3rd to King Turgeon in the Grand Sefton on good to soft ground off a mark of 127. I thought he ran okay at Doncaster and Haydock off a pound higher. Didn't jump as well as he had done previously. He's now dropped back down to a mark of 127. Now, the Hunter's Chase that he won at Cheltenham was over 4 miles.
Yeah.
So this stamina test shouldn't inconvenience him. And I thought, as Tanya said, I still think he is on a slight upward trajectory. And the fact that Henry Brook is already dropped up ahead of time, I thought 14-1 was a big price around Gaboria.
Okay, so Gaboria 14-1, your selection. What are you siding with, Tanya?
I'm going to Ireland because I've got a good record in the race, and I'm going to a horse that's run in the race before in History of Fashion. Who
14-1 as well?
He brings in some interesting form in the fact that he came through and won the Porterstown, and then was in a really, really tough race at Leopardstown, the Paddy Power Chase, where when you see who was against him, Pinkerton, Nick Rocket, 3-Car Bragg, all horses that subsequently came and run really well. But when you watch him again in his actual victory in the Porterstown and in a race where he was a massive price, he's another one. He hits a flat spot and then he kicks on. Now, the running in the race at Leopardstown, that would be run a lot quicker than the race the Eider Chase will be. He's been in here before. He unseated a few years ago in this race before, so they're keen. They think that, you know, this is the ideal, but obviously he comes into the race as an 11-year-old now.
Well,
so I think it was 3 years ago running it. At the price, I think he's got a massive chance in the contest, and obviously we've also got to respect the likes of Egbert, which no doubt Aladdin King, having seen Famous Bridge, but beside that, must think that, you know, I've got a lovely stayer again here.
Yeah.
He knows how to win Scottish Nationals and Itis, and so he's got to come in with a chance. But I'm going with History of Fashion.
Yeah. I'm taking a chance with Anglers Crag again. I like the fact that, well, for a start, it's Newcastle and Brian Ellison. So
yes.
And also, I like how he's been prepped for this race. I thought.
Three runs around the back, beating big distances and get dropped in the handicap.
Race, I mean, he's still £4 higher than when he won the race last year. But it clearly, the plan has always been to come back for this race, and he's found himself £4 higher. And there was enough encouragement last time to think that he's gonna run well. So Anglers Crag for me. The big handicap chase at Kempton on the weekend. You know, I was thinking back to this race. This is the race that Gloria Victor's won back in the old days, because obviously looking at novices running in the race, etc. And what a race it has been over the years. It's obviously not quite the same. However, this year, there are some really interesting horses in it. Highland's the 72 favourite, or joint favourite, along with Iroko with Bet365. Larry's Bar, 6-1. Beachcomber, 8-1. Can Do Kid, well fancy for the National as well. 9-1. Katate Dory, 9-1. Our Power, winner of the race 2 years ago. 10s and 12s bar those. I'll start with you here, Steve. What do you like?
So I backed Highland for this as soon as he wasn't declared for the Rendlesham last weekend. Nick Henderson obviously loves Kempton. Although he's a novice chaser, he's actually older and had more career starts than Iroko. Iroko is now just come out that is an uncertain runner based on the ground if it keeps drying up. I really like Highland so far this season. It's taken me a while to warm to him, but was a really impressive winner on his reappearance. Beat Transmission by 15 lengths at October, which I thought was a good run. Then beat Resplendent Grey in Spinwell Bay in a listed novice chase at Cheltenham on his next start. Resplendent Grey slightly let down that form, but obviously Spinwell Bay has improved that form and is now rated 154. Highland then finished second to the Jukebox Man over this course and distance at Christmas. Was the only horse to get anywhere near him as well so far this season. Masaccio, who I think is a fairly solid yardstick, was about 16 lengths back in third that day as well. I thought a rating of 147 would still underestimate him, so I've backed him for this. And then I thought the biggest danger for me was Beachcomber. He won by 10 lengths over this course and distance last time. He has good form on good to soft and good ground. He's actually a non-runner at Sandown a couple of starts back on soft ground, so the ground will definitely be for his liking. So I'll back both Highland and Beachcomber.
Okay, Highland 7-2 and Beachcomber 8-1. Tanya?
Yeah, I'd be very, very worried about Highland because he brings in Grade 1 form. He ran so brilliantly against the jukebox man after some excellent runs at Cheltenham, to have that versatility to run round Cheltenham and then show speed. It is very rare. He's got it, and he's got, the speed as well. However, you heard the you may or may not know, I hope that Danny McMenamin's coming to Kempton. It wouldn't be an obvious place for him to go, but he brings a horse in Charlie Uberalis, who
12-1.
is too big for his own good. But he isn't. He's great. And he's deceptive, because in that a big race recently at Donny, it looked as though Doc Pick Me all the time was going to come and pick him up, but Danny was cajoling him away, not because he's naughty, it's just because he's a big unit.
Yeah.
He has to have good ground. He's Mr. Good Ground. Even the owner, fantastic of him, put out the stat to show if there's even a murmur of soft. You see the difference in his performance. He beat Dot Pick Me, he beat Forward Plan. Now, who won this race last year? Forward Plan. My one worry with him is, will he go this way round? Because if you look at most of his races, if not all, they've been all the other way around. Charlie Uberalis, he comes in here with a featherweight. And if you see the horses that have had to carry big weights to win this, are the likes of Chris, Pendle, Desert Orchid, Marlborough, Farmer Jack and Gungadoo, that's 11, 12 and over. So if you're looking at the likes of Aroko or the Can Do Kid, you have to put them on a par with those sort of horses. But those ones that I mentioned didn't have a Grand National as their target, which Can Do Kid and Aroko do. And this is going to be run really fast because Beachcomber and Highlander are in it. And Charlie Uberalis can deal with that with the good ground at Donny. If there is another one, it potentially is a Sam Thomas one. I don't know whether he'll run this one, and that's Katie Dory, who luckily will see, if Collector's Item disappears up to Newcastle and Collector's Item wins there. The reason for me mentioning that is Collector's Item won the Somerset National and Katie Dory ran really well, even though jumping a little bit poorly. He's got so much more to come. He was on the up, as it were, and then was given the Somerset National examination, and I think he did rather well in the race because they really clipped along Collector's Item, King Tertian and Katie Dory, and that's worked out really well because the fourth Credo won very, very easily. So subsequent to that, so in short, my selection, I'd love to see Charlie Uberalis go around there. Okay. Diane Sayers done exceptionally well with him, and my danger will be Katie Dory.
Okay. I mean, I like Highland as well.
Yes.
I thought his style as well, and the run behind Jukebox Man was just the sort of prep you'd want for a race like this. But I also given a mention to Al Power, who won the race a couple of years ago. He won it off 1-4-1. He's 1-4-4. Don't think he's run too badly in his last couple of runs. Was second at Cheltenham, obviously, last time. And then I'm thinking, obviously, depending on whether Katate Dory runs or
he might not go there.
If Dylan Johnston gets on board and he takes 3 off, then he's back to 1-4-1. So
yes,
I thought he would be a bit of an each way play, but Highland I think will take all the beating. I don't know if Lowry's bar is going to run or not, but I'm not going to tip him anyway because if I did, he wouldn't run. Okay, a couple of other good races at Kempton to mention. Let's deal with the Dovecote Novices Hurdle, for which Miami Magic is the 15-8 favourite for the Stuart Edmonds team. Tripoli Flyer is 3-1. Starcross Lover 9-2. Celtic Dino 5-1. Roy 7-1. Andershan, who won at Kempton last time, 8s. Obviously Miami Magic was second at Potter's Charm with Celtic Dino and Road Less Travel pulled up that day. But do you think Miami Magic is the one?
He's tough. And what you could see of the race, he's really, really tough. And you notice that he was deliberately, I think, taken to the middle of the track away from Potter's Charm to try and beat that rival by that means. And, of course, he already brings in Grade 1 form. But there are others to point out. Celtic Dino beats Joy Hughes at Ascot.
Yeah.
Obviously, Celtic Dino has run subsequently. It's a race that Chris Gordon excels in, absolutely excels in. He's got Andershan, who 15 days ago just turned a maiden hurdle into an absolute rout. So he comes in here a bit in form. I don't know what happened to Road Less Travelled when he pulled up. I think you've got to ignore that run. What I would say, though, There's a horse called Las Canals who Oliver Greenall and Josh Guerrero have entered both in the Dovecote and the Adonis. Please do not overlook it, wherever if indeed he goes in one of those races, because if you look at the French form, he finished third at Compiègne to Coeur de Mort, sorry. Second was the Workaholic, who was all over the news recently, being the first winner for Bryony Frosterby new season, and won really comfortably. Yeah. Coeur de Mort's come out and won really comfortably, and this was only beaten 9.5. And I mention it because they had kind of an overlooked horse win at Musselburgh called King Yolandi, the Greenall and Josh Guerrero, and they do well at this meeting, and Las Canals should not be ignored. Now, he might not turn up in this one, he might turn up in the Adonis.
33-1 for both with bet 365.
Please do not overlook, because he carries the wonderful colours of Hervier and Omhoblique, and they generally have lovely, lovely horses. So, and I don't think it's a foolhardy entry. Other than that, though, I would say yes, the tough Mining Magic, because he is tough and he showed, real strength. But I'd be worried about the Oliver Greenall or Josh Guerrero.
All right. Good little race this, if the majority of them stand up.
A really competitive renewal. I thought Road Less Travelled was overpriced. I thought you could just kind of write off the run last time. You couldn't really see what was going on, but he's second top rated in this field with a rating of 137. If you look at him prior to this, he was like really progressive. He won a point-to-point by a wide margin, won a maiden hurdle, won a novice hurdle under a penalty, and then beat the Skelton Horse Country Mile at Haydock. And the form obviously that day has been boosted since. Country Mile then went on to beat Wingmen, Palacio, and That's Nice at Cheltenham. So the form was boosted from there. I don't know what happened at Aintree, but I didn't think he should be 8-1 for this. I did try and have a check to see if he's jocked up, but John Joe Jr. isn't jocked up anywhere on Saturday yet. But yeah, I can't see him going off 8-1 if he was declared for this.
I liked Andershan. He won that bumper at Kempton. Looked like a nice horse, and I think he fell, and then things didn't go right. But last time, again, back at Kempton, where he's 2 from 2, he absolutely bolted up.
He did, didn't he?
But officially, he'll have a lot to do against Miami Magic and Road Less Travel, etc. But there's something about it. He's better than 8-1, I think, for this race. So he was my selection for the Dovecote. The Adonis, which Tanya's already mentioned, that Las Canals in both races. Possibly Lulamba. From what Nicky Henderson was saying, he's more keen to run Lulamba, who's 10-11, than Palladium, who is 7-4. Primarily citing that Lulamba's only had 2 runs so far in his career. Palladium, obviously, is a winner of German Derby, is a little bit more experienced. Monday Man 9-4, and then OPEC 9, Sauvignon 14s, along with St. Pancras. If Lulamba does turn up 10-11,
I thought he would prove hard to beat, to be honest. I will have a bet in this if it's Palladium versus Mondo Man as opposed to Lulamba against Mondo Man. I would think that Mondo Man would struggle to reverse form. Bear in mind that he was getting £10 at Ascot with the penalty structure that day. I was really encouraged by Mondo Man's performance there. That was his first run for 189 days. It was his hurdling debut. He was keen. He'd obviously won over just shy of a mile and 2 on the flat. Was a really highly rated flat performer. And I would have preferred his run over Palladium's at Huntingdon. I know the form is working out from that Huntingdon race better than what we expected at the time. The second and the fourth have both won since. But I thought there was huge progress to be made for the Mondo Man. And yeah, I don't know what price he is at the minute.
9-4.
Yeah, 9-4. I see. I wouldn't be in a rush to back him just in case he is against the Lamba and they reoppose. But if he's a similar sort of price against Palladium, I'd back him at that.
I think there's going to be loads of improvement to come from Mondo Man. You just look at the flat form. He was beaten 4 legs, 5th in the French Derby, and then he was 4th to Calandagan and the King Edward. He's a high class horse. I think the Moore team think that he's going to be a star for them. I get Steve's point. Officially, Weights and Measures says people struggled to overturn that form with Lamb, but I'm sure there's much more to come from him. What do you like, Tan?
Well, This race has been cruel but kind to the Moors because I think they've had the runner-up 5 times. Because remember, it's holding it all up. Yes, the horses that they've had have been so good, but unfortunately they've come up against, as you can see, the Roll of Honour's absolutely amazing. 6 times this has, since '98, produced the Triumph Hurdle winner. So we'll see whether this will be a 7th. A couple of those 6 have been Nicky Henderson's horses, just to give you the flag up. I do think Lamba, because it won so comfortably at Ascot, but once again I'll be worried to see whether the Oliver Greenall Las Canals go, but in reality it would be the Lamba for me here.
Okay.
And poor Moors might get the other way round. It might be the 6th second place for them, but they had run some really, really good horses in this, to be seen. Eider Chase may have been one of them, and that kind of thing. It's just that's how good they are.
And one more race to definitely look at, and that's the Pendle Novices Chase at Kempton on Saturday. Jinko Blue set to be back in action after his mishap at Ascot last weekend is the 5-4 favourite. Rubo 9-4, Imperial Saint 11-4, 15-2 bar those. Tanya, what do you like?
I love Mr. Aintree, Imperial Saint.
Okay.
Bringing his speed and his dexterity into a race like this, the way he runs into his races, he seems to me so experienced already. And he was actually 3rd in the Moon d'Orange Iroko race. And he really gave it his all. He really took the race. He was part of the clan that took the race to Moon d'Orange, as it were, and kept going after the last. He finished 3rd, and now he comes, I feel, into a more gentler race. That's Cheltenham race was run really frenetically, and he got involved, whereas his races shows finesse and grace when it comes into Aintree. He comes through the races gently and gradually. If you're out in front, you're thinking, I hope Imperial Saint's nowhere nearby. And you always feel comfortable with his jumping as well, and he's improved with every run, and he's only gone out £0.5 for that Cheltenham race. If I do have a worry in the race, a couple of ones, Rhubarb, because I don't think he got the recognition he deserved for his Warwick run. Everyone was focusing on Load of Sud, as they should be. He was 5 on, but they should not have dismissed Rhubarb. And dear old Ashdale Bob, who has run in so many grade 1s, I counted them. He's running 9 grade 1s and really classy hurdle races. He hadn't been lucky, so he had 5 chases, but what chases he has, he's run really well, and he will never be beat. If he's alongside you, he's a bit like the 300 through 5 Victorino race. He will be battling away. If you watch his race last time, he was beat, and then suddenly he came back and shocked everyone. So if Jesse does run him here, it'd be lovely. He had an extra ingredient, but I'm with Imperial Saint.
Okay, Imperial Saint. Tanya, what about you, Steve?
So it's interesting. James Bowen is jocked up on Ashdale Bob, so I assume confirmed runner, and that would also rule out Nicky Henderson's obviously got 3 in this at the minute.
Yeah.
So that would, as second jockey to Nicky Henderson, you'd imagine the 2 outsiders won't run, and Nico de Boyne would be on Jinko Blue. I'd be against Jinko Blue.
Yeah.
I didn't like his first 2 jumps, let alone obviously when he sprawled on landing at that 3rd, so I would be against him as favourite. I thought this was Rubo's to win, to be honest. Flat track, tick. Right-handed, tick. Good ground, tick. Kempton, tick. Trip is the question mark. This is going to be the first time that he runs over further than 2 mile 1 in his career. But he was staying on strongly behind Load of Sud last time. And Load of Sud is a fantastic jumper. Warwick takes him jumping, and Rubo was equally as good at his fences there. We don't really know what happened at Kempton behind Sergino and Ballyburn, because they were a distance clear of him. But I was really encouraged by his run last time. I've then gone through running styles. Mark of Gold is held up. Boomborn is held up. Ashdale Bob made the running last time, but doesn't usually. Imperial Saint is midfield. Jinko Blue is prominent, but doesn't make the running. So I thought he'd get an easy lead in this. Back at his favoured track. I thought 9-4 was very, very fair.
Yeah, I like Rubo as well. Worrying about the trip was my only thing. But then I look back at his runs on the flat. He won a mile 7 race at the back end of his 3-year-old campaign at St. Cloud. So clearly there's some stamina in there. And I go back to the point that you make, the run behind Load of Sud, he stayed on nicely. The other thing as well about the race, I think he could go a sort of Pic D'Orhy ride, out in front and in his rhythm, which I think would really suit him. When he's made the running and he's won at Kempton or Wincanton before, that's what's happened, and he It's just too, and he's got a touch of class about him for this race, so he would be my selection as well. So that's Rubo in the Pendle. Is there anything else you want to mention running over the weekend before we get to the best bet? Save that for last.
Are we going to chat about punches down at all? Or?
Absolutely. Please go ahead. When you fancy a punches down.
Punches down, Duffy's Hody. Just keeps on the up and up and up.
Yeah.
Philip Rothwell and Tiernan Power Roach. I think the pair of them, haven't seen the handicap entries for Cheltenham yet, but I expect to see Tiernan Power Roach in the winners' enclosure because they've had a tremendous time. Duffy's Hody just keeps winning and keeps improving, keeps winning. Say to Chance, it runs in the 340 at Punchestown. That's got form with James's Gate, which we think James's Gate will go well if indeed it heads to Cheltenham. And then, of course, we've got the Grand National Trial there. Now, where it all began, never ran in the Grand National Trial at Haydock, so it pulls up Punchestown. If there is an issue to take on where it all began, it will be Bushman's Pass, because he led the Thaisis for a long time off and finished fourth in the end. I don't think he'll fade so badly this time because he needed the race. But then he could be a good lead into for where it all began. So just throw out those names. But Duffy's Hody is certainly, indeed, look out for a young man called Tiernan Power Roach, because if you haven't noticed him already, he's very, very good.
For sure. Anything else you want to mention?
Just Jade de Grugy is back. She obviously had a setback and runs in the Corvega Mares Hurdle. Her stablemate is in there against it, so it won't be a complete penalty kick. But obviously she's now quite short for the Mares Hurdle, with people thinking that both Lossiemouth and Brighter Days Ahead will head for the Champion Hurdle. So keep an eye on her.
I mentioned Kepler's Law, who has got a couple of mentions.
Chepstow.
Yeah, he's entered Chepstow in the Patemps qualifier. He's handicap debut 128. Andy Holding was very keen. He was interested. I saw everyone at Leicester and I think that was quite smart. Didn't do the numbers like Andy did in Andy K, so that was really impressive. So hopefully he was due to run yet. He's had a couple of entries the last few weekends, but he hasn't made an appearance. But hopefully at Chepstow this weekend for Kepler's Law. Okay, that's a look at some of the good racing ahead of us this weekend. Now, before we get into our best bets of the weekend, just to let you know, on the free-to-play 6 Horses Challenge, it is available every weekend with free spins on offer if you get 2 or 3 selections correct. Prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. T's and C's apply. And so to the final part of the show and our best bets of the weekend. Tanya, all you have to do is tip a horse that runs, and you're doing better than I am. So, go.
I want to make sure the pair of you going to, either of you going to go in the Pendle, because if you are, I won't.
I'm going in the Pendle. Yes.
Okay, right, that's good. I can then be decisive and go for the 115 at Kempton.
Okay.
And I will go with punctuation. It's a day where Nicky Henderson potentially could excel. Obviously, you'll say, punctuation was Fergal O'Brien. It was Fergal O'Brien. Nicky's had punctuation for one run over potentially a distance a little bit too short. It was a good run. In fact, it was after a fair way off the track. It was a 4th to Classic King, which we've seen run to good effect. And now we're going over a little bit further at Kempton, and he's a big old sort punctuation. He's run some really great races in the past. He's run the Greatwood, and I think coming in for his second run, that's where I'll go. I'll go for punctuation because I don't want to be a non-runner. I'm not happy because he's got a couple in the race, Nicky. But Nico's jocked up for both of them. So
okay. Punctuation at Kempton on Saturday. Steve?
Mine is going to be Highland in the Ladbrokes Trophy handicap chase. I just think his 3 runs so far this season have been fantastic. 2 easy victories. The form of those have both been boosted. And then his second behind the Jukebox Man in the Grade 1 Corso Star over this course and distance was brilliant. Mark of 147 could still underestimate him. He will love the ground, love the track. And I thought 7-2 was very fair.
And I'm going to go for Rubo in the Pendle. I think he's the class act in the race. I believe he will stay. I'm pretty confident he will. He's got a pretty good record, admittedly over hurdles at Kempton. That run behind Sergino and Ballyburn, you can put a line for it out of his comfort zone. The Nichols horses were right at Christmas time. Looks like they might be coming back to a bit better form now. And I'm hoping that Harry Cobden can reproduce the type of Pic D'Orhy ride that he produced last weekend at Ascot on Rubo. Get out in front, get that rail, get him into his rhythm, which probably get most of the others out of their comfort zone when push comes to shove. So Rubo in the Pendle for me. That's it in terms of our preview. Tanya, are you out and about this week going anywhere racing? be?
No, I'm saving myself up now. We were at Haydock just gone. We've got potentially some meetings. We might be at Kelso coming up, which is it a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
The More Battle Day. We'll be at Kelso for More Battle
Right.
Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Excellent. And you're helping me out on Saturday with ITV Racing.
I will be.
Yes.
I will be. Yeah. Well, we just can't wait, can we? There's such a great. See, it's hard because I would be torn between going to Kempton at Newcastle because the racing's great at both, isn't it? Yeah.
And what about you, Steve?
I don't know.
Half term.
Yeah, I could see if I can convince the wife and daughter to come to see you at Kempton.
Yes.
Exactly.
Kempton.
Come
Yeah.
to Kempton.
The band could be
look
back
after
together.
you. We'll look up. Yeah, we can do it on next podcast there at Kempton when Punctuation, Highland, and Rubo all win on Saturday at Kempton. Thank you both very much for joining me on this episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. As always, if you've liked what you've heard or watched in this or any of our previous episodes, then leave us a review, a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comment section on YouTube. And thank you, by the way, to everyone who has contributed to those comments as well. We have enjoyed hearing your feedback. We'll be back next week with Dan Overall to have a look ahead at the action from, or look back at the action from this weekend and look ahead to what's coming up. Particularly, of course, we are going to be just a couple of weeks away from the Cheltenham Festival. So things are very exciting. It's an exciting time of the year. Thank you all very much for joining us for this episode of Racing Weekly. But from Steve, Tanya, myself, and the team, bye-bye.